Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wellness Revolution with Dr. Robert Wiedemann. And you can catch Dr. Wiedemann every Monday night, usually at 9 o'clock. Sometimes we do Wednesdays. You can catch me at healthreform90@gmail.com or 406-270-3754 or getdocsminerals.com.
Yeah, right now you're not going to reach getdocsminerals.com. We're having trouble with. We have to create a new website for. I have to create a landing page to even get to my site. So what you can do is go to health 94health my94health.com / and then my longevity number, which is 101-297-389. Unfortunately, we're actually going to revamp some things. We're going to be creating a new website to access the regular website, and we're actually thinking of doing some other things that'll make it much easier to help you get started with things. So, but tonight we wanted to, we're just going to have a kind of relaxed night. Marvin's not with us. He went up into the mountains for Labor Day weekend. He's kind of relaxing right now, and so we're going to just do the show without him tonight. Just going to have more kind of a relaxed night tonight, and talk about some issues and things like that. One of the things that I have noticed is that there are some very offensive ads on YouTube and things like that, and it's over and over and over. This is really, I mean, Big Pharma is really hurting, and so now their big thing is erectile dysfunction, and so they're putting some very revolting things on there. They're having girls get on there and say, my stepson was noticing me in the shower, and I caught him spying on me, and then she goes into the spiel on how her husband has found this new thing that where he can cause erections and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very offensive. You never used to see this kind of stuff. I mean, when I was a kid, you never ever saw any sexual things promoted on television, and it's just a sign of the times. I believe that the Lord is coming soon, and wickedness is increasing in the earth. We see all kinds of things happening. But one of the things I noticed that at the same time, they have all these ads that are anti-eggs. Don't eat eggs because it'll cause type 2 diabetes. That is a total crock. Okay, and I'll stand here or sit here and say I rebut that 100%. Eggs are one of the most important foods you can eat, and let's see. Can you silence me for right now for a moment?
Yeah, sure. I'll silence you. No problem. So everybody, while Doc is taking that phone call and we're going to be on air here, I just want to tell you that my effects that I'm seeing with not only longevity, but other things that I'm doing protocols. I have a continued kidney stone, kidneys issue, bladder issue / problem. I wake up 5-6 times at night when I go to sleep, when I should be sound asleep. I am going to the bathroom. I am getting up, interrupting my REM sleep, not getting the proper sleep. I believe that several nights. Oh, Doc, there you are. Okay. Go ahead, Doc.
Yeah, what were you saying about sleep?
I was just talking about how my issues seem sometimes to have a peak, and then from that peak, either they get a little bit less over time rather than get worse. So what I try to do is keep the nutrients in my body and eat as healthy as I possibly can without actually growing my own stuff. And that's unbelievably horrible today to do. To go to the grocery store and see that a lot of the foods that are made, and RFK Jr. said this too, that the foods that are made are not even made for animals and us. It's made for the pharmaceutical industry. It's made for the uh, the food industry, the PHOOD food industry, not the FOOD food.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's why I say that as food PHOOD, which is pharmaceutical food. In that, that's where you have all your pesticides, and they take all the nutrients out of the breads in the body, and everything that's bad for you, they put in there, making it think it's good for you. So it's the wrong advertising for the bad stuff, or the good advertising for them, bad advertising for us. There's not a lot to choose from. So therefore, if you don't have the proper nutrients in your body, like we talk about, Doc, all the time, and you're eating not the proper foods that we can get in our body, where are the nutrients coming from? Can you tell me where?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in terms of the minerals, if it's not in the ground, it's not going to be in the food. And animals have a harder time. You can get minerals from meat. I believe that minerals were once evenly distributed throughout the earth before the flood, and then the flood came, and the the firmament, which was a it was a metallic sheet. When you compress water under many megabars of pressure at a cold temperature, it becomes a transparent, translucent metal that is actually a superconductor, and that's how it was suspended in the heavens. And actually, it brought about the recharging of the Earth's. The Earth is actually a big battery, and that's why it has a magnetic field, just like a battery. And when God broke up the fountains of the deep, and the firmament actually cracked and came down on us. That's the polar areas became the ice age. Came down to about as far as Kansas City. And they say, well, we have global warming. Well, what's happening is that the the uh, the ice age isn't over yet, because the ice age extends up into the Arctic areas and Antarctica. You see, and so that at one time those poles were not frozen. When the firmament was around the Earth, they were not frozen. And so what happened was we had this overburden of water. And what happened is that the fountains of the great deep broke up more, and they sunk down and became the oceans. And then the water drained off the land and washed all the minerals off the land and down into the bottom of the oceans. And so we don't have an even distribution of minerals throughout the earth like we did before the flood. This is why people live to be 900 years old. There was 2.185 times the amount of atmospheric pressure that there is now, and there was 30% oxygen. And the average temperature all over the earth was 78 degrees. And so you had these fountains of the great deep. The rivers actually flowed in the opposite direction that they are now, because originally there were 4 rivers that went out from Eden and watered the whole face of the earth. If you look in the Bible, so rivers started out big and ended up small. They branched out in the opposite direction they do now. Now they start out small and end up draining into big rivers and into the ocean. Well, it was the opposite way around, the opposite way before the earth. And what happened is that these rivers replenished these rivers, and the mist that came up from the earth at night all replenished the minerals all the time. So you had a constant bath of minerals, and the remnants of this are actually in southern Utah, where Dr. Wallach gets his minerals. There's a mineral mine down there, and I've been there. And it was capped off by a volcano, so that overburden went on to all this plant matter that had accumulated there over 2,500 years, or however long it was before the flood, and sealed it up so that we have some today. So what we're getting from these mines is actually prehistoric hay. prehistoric plant matter, and it has all the minerals in it, all 77 minerals in there. And when you take that stuff, it really makes a difference in your life. I have given out bottles of minerals to people, and have that bottle. I said, you don't owe me anything if it doesn't do any good for you. But it's $20, $25 if if you see a benefit from it, let me know. I've never had anybody not pay me back so far. And the thing with it is that learning how to incorporate the Dr. Wallach's protocols into your life is really important because of what it does for you. And I was going to finish we were talking about the advertisements for erectile dysfunction, and we also have anti-egg advertisements now. Now here's the thing: you get cholesterol from eggs. Cholesterol is healthy; it's not unhealthy. We have been lied to by the medical profession, stating that cholesterol is bad. Your heart plugs up because of cholesterol. Well, here's what happens: your blood vessel walls get damaged by free radicals by eating the bad foods, bad oils, things like canola oil, corn oil. All these things are unnatural oils, and you take those into yourself, and it's so common and so widespread. You can't even go out to eat without these idiots putting this kind of oil on the griddles instead of butter. So what you do is you use butter, or there's something called ghee, which is actually purified butter. It's very expensive. It's easier just to purify your own butter and use that, and use butter on everything. I use butter for everything, and it works perfectly fine. Soft scrambled eggs and butter, best thing for you in the morning. And Dr. Wallach, he met this guy that told him that he ate 24 eggs a day. And he went to the doctor. He had all his blood tests taken, and everything was perfect. And they said, "Why do you eat 24 eggs a day?" He says, "I want to be more studly." You see, cholesterol forms the basis for our testosterone, estrogen, and virtually all of your hormones are the basis is made from cholesterol. These doctors, the FDA has actually banned statin drugs. Did you know that, Doc?
Didn't know that.
Yep, it's actually banned statin drugs simply because of the fact that what it does is your neurons in the brain, the white matter of the brain is all cholesterol. And what that is, it's like a insulator for the nerves. You strip that away, you don't have insulators anymore. That's why people end up with dementia and Alzheimer's and all this kind of stuff. It's basically a lack of cholesterol. So Dr. Wallach recommends eating a quarter pounder a day. He recommends eating eggs. He says, in fact, in certain cases, it depends on how much you weigh. He'll recommend 6 to 8 eggs a day. And you want to keep the yolks runny if you can. But there's where so you were talking before, Doc G, about them creating a problem, like ED, you create the problem by telling people not to eat eggs. And then you turn around and create a cure for it that you can sell. And that's what they're doing. And I turn those advertisements off the minute I see them. If I can't turn it off, I'll turn the whole video off. I won't watch it, because I don't want to be brainwashed into their kind of stuff, but Doc, we were going to talk a little bit about incorporating longevity into your life. I want to just hear what you had to say before. You were talking a little bit about just what kind of changes you've seen happen and what your struggles are right now and what you're going through, and see if we can talk about that a little bit.
Well, speaking as an older man now, older male, 64, I do have some kidney stones. I know they're kidney stones. I might even have a UTI. I'm not sure about that. I know I have kidney function issues, kidney, they call it CKD, which is some type of kidney disease. Notice how everything is now a disease. If, if whatever it is, it becomes a disease. You know why they say that, Doc?
Why?
I think you know why. The reason why they say it is because they can only treat a disease with a pharmaceutical. They can't treat a disease with nutrients. You can't treat a disease with natural, environmental foods and liquids, which is fruit. So they say it's a disease. So therefore, under the medical establishment, again, these these things I'm saying could be wrong, but this is my opinion, my only opinion, the way I feel. I want everybody to know that. So what I'm saying to you is their idea that treating everything as disease, only a pharmaceutical can treat a disease. That's what it says. That's what the bylaws say. So therefore, they have to use a drug.
Well, here's another interesting rule. If it's a treatment, it can never be a cure.
There you go. Right. Because why don't they want to cure you? We all know the
Because they
answer.
want to keep you coming. Yeah,
They,
absolutely. Now, chiropractors are accused of that. The medical doctors. When I was going to Palmer, this was back in the 70s. There were 5 chiropractors that were suing the American Medical Association, and because what these medical doctors started out doing. Now, B.J. Palmer was the developer of chiropractic. His father was the discoverer of chiropractic, and he developed $1 million research clinic, and he had a full medical staff in that B.J. Palmer clinic, and he found over 3,600 diseases responded to upper cervical chiropractic care. 3,600, and this is according to diagnosis by the medical staff that he had. He had a top rate medical diagnostic lab there, and Dr. H.B. Hender, I think it was Dr. A.B. Hender and his son, Dr. H.B. Hender. I think they were both medical doctors. One of them was a medical doctor and a chiropractor. The other one was a medical doctor, Dr. A.B. Hender, I believe it was, and did all the testing. Had a full nurses staff. They had microscopes, and they had chemistry labs and everything else there, and they discovered that Dr. B.J. Palmer would take the patient in, and they would examine them. I remember there was a case of liver cancer that came into them. He had high bilirubin in his blood and so forth, in his urine and stuff, and came in one adjustment by BJ, and it cleared up within a month. He was actually a colonel in the United States Army. They sent him home because they couldn't do anything for him. Went to the B.J. Palmer Clinic, got B.J. to work him up, and he did scans on him to make sure he found the pattern and pattern of interference with the neurocalligraph, and adjusted him, and he never had to be adjusted again after that. That's how good B.J. was. And of course, with NUCA, we try to duplicate with precision. The adjustment is a very precise adjustment, and so we recommend all of our people to go to NUCA doctors. And if anybody out there needs to see a NUCA doctor, just let me know, and contact me at my phone number, text me. If you need help of some kind. And so the thing with it is that, so why do we do both nutrition and chiropractic care? Well, it's simply because the chiropractic takes care of the communication pathways, the nervous system portion of this, which is control by the brain. It's the innate intelligence within us controlling through the brain over the spinal cord and to the nerve roots, ramifying to the nerves, ramifying to all parts of the body, peripheral nerves, ramifying to all parts of the body. And if there's interference in the spine, it will interfere with the brain cell to tissue cell communication. It's a two-way feedback loop, efferent and afferent, from the brain to the body and from the body back to the brain. Yeah, I mean, now they're discovering with these robots that they're making, they have to have a two-way communication. They have to have a sensory, they're developing sensory things so that robot knows when to stop and start, and when things, and it's going to become more sophisticated as it goes along. But
Doc,
anyway,
let me expand on that, okay?
Okay.
And then I'll let you get back to what you were saying, because I don't want you to forget your thoughts. But when I was working for the New Jersey State Police, and we were doing remotes for the robots, it was imperative that the signals had to be received in any form or any way possible, because that robot was either going to hold an explosive device, stop an explosive device, or ignite one. Now, the reason why that's important, let me explain to you why. What you just said is very important. If the pathways are not corresponding with the way they're supposed to be for the brain, in other words, it's going this way instead of going that way, it's going, and it gets a mixed signal, our brain doesn't know what to do. So when I was working on the robots for the New Jersey bomb squad, the biggest question I always had was, is the signal going to get through enough for you to stop, start, or ignite the robot? And that was my biggest thing. And you know what the guy told me? We have no control over that. That is super scary, because, you're dealing with, you don't know what kind of device. You don't even know if it's going to make it to where it's going, or it's not going to make it to where it's going, because it's not going to get the signal in a certain area that doesn't have a good carrier signal for it, whatever it is. I don't know what kind of signal they were using back then. It wasn't Wi-Fi, I can tell you that. But they had communication from receiving and transmitting. Whatever signal interference that was thrown in there, it was only God that could help us through it. There was no other way through it, because they're crossing their fingers, hoping that robot goes to where it's got to go, pick up the device, come back, put it in the container, and take it to another place and explode it at another time. Saving people. So that's the same type of pathways that you're talking about, that have to get the signal, have to understand the signal, and interpret it the right way. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's very good, because there's a, remember we talked about the simple cycle, it looks like a safety pin,
Mm-hmm.
Your brain cell to tissue cell, and there's 33 steps, 16 on each side. And there is a very important step on the sensory side called intellectual adaptation. That's where it comes from the body to the brain, and to the brain, and then there's intellectual adaptation. Intellectual adaptation is the decision that the brain makes for the next impulse. Now, there can be interference. If you have nerve interference, it won't get through to the body. And what happens when you have nerve interference is your brain becomes less aware of your body and what it needs to do. And it's like Marvin told me today he had to go to the chiropractor. He got hit in the head again. Marvin's always bumping his head, and he was 28 pounds off. Now, the chiropractor, the NUCA doctor that he sees, weighs him on a bilateral scale. This is a very common measurement. He was 28 pounds off. As soon as he got adjusted, it's very very close, and he's still recovering from having hit his head. It's actually a space occupying lesion. Now I have dissected numerous upper cervical spines in the lab at Palmer when I was before I graduated. I knew I was going to be an upper cervical specialist, so I actually went in and dissected many upper cervical spines, and they had them where they were sawed in half, right down the middle,
Wow.
and you can look at the side of it, and all you have to do is move that atlas just a little tiny bit, and it's affecting the brainstem. All it takes is just a little tiny bit of misalignment in there to cause problems with that brainstem. And it's a three-dimensional misalignment. Your head will misalign from the atlas. Your neck will misalign off from underneath of it, the base of support, and it can twist. And there can be a twist in that top vertebra. And there can be a counter twist between the top two vertebrae. Now, there are also arteries that come up through the spine. The vertebral artery goes up through the transverse processes of the vertebrae. And at the top where the atlas is, it'll take a 90-degree turn in, 90-degree turn forward, 90-degree turn upwards, 90-degree forward, and then it joins together in the basilar artery and the circle of Willis, which supplies the whole base of the brain.
Hmm.
If you have a misalignment of that, atlas and axis in opposite directions, it can restrict the blood flow. And when I was in practice, I noticed that there were people that would have transient ischemic attacks. My mother was one of them. And I noticed that when you would have like an 8-degree rotatory misalignment of the atlas one way, and like a 16-degree misalignment, twisting the other way of the axis, it would restrict the blood flow to the brain, and it would restrict the blood flow to the base of the brain. And I remember my mother went to her NUCA doctor in Monterey Bay, and on her way home, something happened, some traumatic thing happened, and she started having symptoms like it says, turn around, go back. She did, and it was out of adjustment again, and he corrected her and got her straightened out. But she struggled with those transient ischemic attacks, and when she would get corrected, it would take it away, So anyway, so there's a lot of things that can happen just from misalignment. So, but I also wanted to get back to talk a little bit about this thing about eggs and about what the advertisements are doing. They're telling people falsely that eggs are bad for you. Well, maybe some eggs are bad for you if they're not from a good source. I mean, if you go to Walmart, and buy their regular eggs, they're going to taste like tennis balls. That's what I've noticed. What I do is I buy the eggs that are basically there's the type of eggs that are actually, it's not free range, because free range isn't the right word for that. It's where they're pasture raised, where they're able to get out in the pasture and forage for their food naturally. And those are the best kind of eggs, and you can tell they're good because the yolks are like a deep yellow. They're more of a reddish yellow, and they're just a healthier egg. But those are good for you. You want to eat all you want, because eat them in the morning, even when at night, whatever you want to do. Those eggs are good for you. The best are to be either now Marvin recommends preparing eggs. If you're going to fry them in, put some water in the bottom of your pan, and put an ounce or two of Bragg's apple cider vinegar in there, and that'll keep the eggs together. and you put them in there, and they'll fry, and they're really nicely fried. There's no brown on them. You don't want to burn the eggs because that creates um, oh, I forget. It alters the the protein in the egg and actually burns it, so that it can create a free radical in you and damage your blood vessel walls. So you don't want to do that. Or soft scrambled in butter. You don't scramble them hard. They're a little bit moist when you get them out of there. And you don't do them long. You basically are going to heat the griddle up to where you can lay your hand on it, and then put butter on it and melt the butter, and then put the eggs in. Mix them with a little bit of water, and they're prepared better that way. So now, Doc, we were going to talk about your some of the struggles you've been through.
Yeah.
What changes did you notice when you started on longevity?
Well, when you're dealing with health issues, you have an up and down thing, right? You see like, oh, things are getting better, and then they get worse again, because there's two actions to this. And the first action is taking the right amount that you need for your body. Everybody's body's different because of the weight, whatever. So when I started out, I was on a low dose. I was just getting it in my body, getting it in my body, getting it in my body. Now I'm taking a little bit more. I've noticed a little bit more of healthier things. One of the things that are healthier is I look at my face, I see a fuller face. I don't see like it was, it was like withdrawn a little bit before, which could have been from weight loss. I'm not going to sit here and say that, but I've noticed a little bit of little things. And it's the little things that we don't really take notice of, that when you open it and see it, you say, oh yeah, here they are. I see them now, but I didn't see them then because I wasn't looking for them.
Mm-hmm.
Doing life. I was walking around. I have never really walked this whole yard with a lawnmower until this last year.
Really?
I used to use a riding mower. And what's weird about that is, well, it's not that big of a yard. Really, it's not. I've been in a lot of pain. But now I find myself able to cope with it a little bit more. And I wasn't able to do that years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't able to push a lawnmower. I wasn't able to walk a long distance or just around the corner without having to breathe and stop and breathe. Or I had real bad back pain I was dealing with for a long time. I still have it. Every now and then I have it. I'm not going to sit here and say I don't have it, but it's not as severe as it was.
Well, maybe if we can get you to a NUCA doctor, we can help with that.
Because
I would love to say that longevity is the do all be all, but it's not. You still have to do the right things by getting your spine in balance. It puts a tremendous amount of stress on your spine to have yourself out of balance. Because what happens if you can envision a yard swing? You know how you have the seat and you have the two ropes or chains that go up. If you were to sit on that and you shorten one chain, what would happen to your back?
Yeah,
you'd have to compensate.
Yeah.
See, well, when your atlas goes out, there are two centers in the brainstem, facilitatory and inhibitory, that are affected. You have an overflooding of the neural pathways on one side or the other, and it will cause spastic contracture. Now, a spasm is a sustained involuntary contraction of the muscles. Now, all of our muscles, when you're alive or when you have a nerve supply, have some degree of tension on them. Here's how the muscles work. The muscles are like a bunch of electric motors, only they don't work like they're not in rotary type of thing. What they do is they actually have contractile tissues that act like this. They like this. They'll come together. Now, a muscle spindle will contract and then relax. And what you have is a firing of these. You can actually put a stethoscope on your muscle, and you can hear kind of a low roar on there. And when you contract the muscle, you actually have a high amount of, you can hear more and more contracting fibers. What they'll do is contract and relax. So a lot of these are contracting and relaxing, and that shortens the muscle. It's actually an electrochemical reaction. It's like an electric motor. All these, and muscles never push, they only pull. So what they're doing is doing this. They're contracting and relaxing real fast. And the more tension that's on that muscle, the more tone that's in that muscle, the higher rate of firing. So when you're out of adjustment, it causes an overflooding on one side or the other. Now, there's actually there's actually 2 front and 2 back groups. The back ones in the back are the erector spinae, then you have the quadratus lumborum, and then you have the psoas muscle on the front.
Mm-hmm.
So you can actually twist the pelvis. So you actually have a twisting motion like this. In other words, like that. Or you can have them like that. There's all kinds of different ways that low back will misalign when the atlas is out.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when a doctor lays you down and checks your legs, he's checking for a contracted leg, one that's pulled short. And it can be pulled short. And listen, I've always believed, and my understanding is that the shorter that leg is being contracted, the closer to death you are.
I wanted to say something about that too. Let me say that because there's been an epidemic lately of hip problems with people.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think they're addressing the right problem. They're addressing the after effect of the body being misaligned. Am I wrong or right?
Yeah, they're treating the symptoms. They're not addressing the cause.
I need hip surgery. For what? What's wrong with your hips?
Well, here's something. Now that gets into the nutrition side of it, because I remember having a patient this is back in the 90s. This was back in the 80s. Came to my office, and she was a good patient for about 10 years. And she had got to the place where she couldn't sit straight she had to hunch to sit because her hips were, she had degenerative changes in the hips. I didn't know about longevity in those days. I didn't know enough to realize that could change if she were to get on the proper protocols.
Well, see, Doc, I knew about longevity. I just didn't have anybody like a doctor or anybody to tell me why things were working differently. If I was on longevity the whole time, I'd probably be sitting here younger, feeling better, not dealing with a lot of issues.
Well, I'll tell you something. I didn't know back in the 90s when I was practicing in Kalispell, Montana. I was in longevity, but I didn't have anybody mentoring me to understand the symptoms of nutritional deficiency. All I knew about is there was different packs, and they were touting them for symptoms rather than, teaching me that. I mean, then we would have these meetings, and I would go to them, and they were basically teaching. Well, we have the pig pack for arthritis. We have the King Kong cardio for the heart, and there was a couple other packs like that in those days. And I didn't realize that the basis is the 90 essentials. I didn't even learn that then, except for listening to Dead Doctors Don't Lie. And I knew I needed to take it for myself to increase my longevity. Now, my introduction to longevity was actually before longevity. It was a company called Soaring Eagle that Dr. Wallach was involved with, and that company basically did some very bad things. They were stealing people's commissions and not paying them out and things like that. And so, they fired Dr. Wallach and they fired um, the Richard Renton, who was the main formulator for. They call him Dr. Dirt because he helped Dr. Wallach formulate these uh, different um, recipes for the different nutrients. And they fired them both. Figured, well, we don't need you anymore. Well, Dr. Wallach went right down the street and he started his own business up, longevity, and it was called American Longevity at that time. Turned it over to his son and said, "It's yours. Now I'll be here to educate." And Dr. Wallach didn't stop educating, even though he was in between companies. He didn't stop for a minute. He believed in this so strongly that that he went out. He continued to lecture on his own. And when longevity got started, when American Longevity started, then he was able to hit the ground. I was one of the first that joined up afterwards. Now here's what happened. They had this stuff called tangy tangerine. Now some people, uh, you know, from let me back up a couple of years. When I was in high school, I stayed with my aunt and uncle for a period of time, and I would get this terrible anxiety feeling in my chest, and I couldn't get rid of it. And I told my aunt about it. She took me to the doctor and got me some vitamin B shots, and of course it went away. Tremendous, but I thought to myself, and I don't know what else was in the shot. I think it was a B complex along with B12, and I felt better right away. And it was vitamins, and I thought, why do I have to have a shot in my vein to have that result? Well, when I got out to Montana and somebody gave me 3 little bottles of tangy tangerine and 3 of the cherry mints, and I took one of each a day for 3 days. I felt tremendously different. I you know, recognized what was happening. I wanted to be on that right away. And I'd listened to the lecture, Dead Doctors Don't Lie. And I had met Dr. Wallach at they had a place that used to be Perkins, and then the Perkins closed and moved to a different location, right. And it changed into Finnegan's. And I would go into Finnegan's there. He would be there at the head of the table and had this whole pile of vitamin pills before him. And he would put one in his mouth and just kind of roll it around and then swallow it. He didn't have a glass of water there. I don't remember him having a glass. And he would consume that whole pile of vitamins and then have his meal afterwards. He would have a hamburger and, he believed in a quarter pounder a day. And so he followed that. So Finnegan's was a very nice place. I hope it's still out there. I want to go back someday and eat there. But anyway, he followed his own example. Is what impressed me is that Dr. Wallach, followed his own advice. He didn't, whatever advice he gave somebody else, it wasn't something he didn't do himself. And his goal is to live to be 200 and some. So, but anyway, but keeping the 90 essential nutrients going in your body is an important thing. I know that for myself, I don't want to ever quit. I don't ever want my body to not have those 90 essential nutrients because my cells don't fire right when they're not there. You've got to have the resources. It's as simple as understanding an automotive engine. You've got to have good gas and good spark. And if you got both, then you got the best of both worlds. Now, can bad gas cause or not enough gas cause the car to misfire? Yes. Can a bad spark caused the big car to misfire? Yes. Well, the same thing is true with the body. There are many overlapping symptoms that you really can't sort out unless if you're not under NUCA care, you're going to be able to tell. And if you're not under Dr. Wallach's care but are under NUCA care, there's going to be, you're going to be able to tell. But the best of both worlds is to have all your nutrients and have good nerve conductivity along with that. And, you stop and think about, I feel sorry for medical doctors. Would you want to give a drug to somebody to try to suppress some? Basically, here's what's happening when this is my belief from my observation is that when you're giving a medication to treat a symptom, what you're basically doing is tricking the body into believing it has all the nutrients when it doesn't. It's like counterfeiting. It's like counterfeit money might help your bank for a little while. Now, Doc, let's say that I owed you some money, okay? And I wrote you a big check. Let's say I owed you $2,400. Mm-hmm. And I wrote this check out for $2,400 and gave it to you. I mean, I would pay you maybe $3,500. I owe you $2,400, but I pay you a bigger check and hand it to you. As soon as it hits the bank, the bank would accept it, and then they would analyze it. And what would happen after that? What would happen after that, Doc? What would happen to your bank account?
Probably go down to nothing.
Yeah, it would screw it up, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It could cause a real big problem. And then who would they want to come after? But I'm gone. Let's see. Goodbye, Doc.
Me.
Bye-bye. You see?
Yeah, you're right. Yep.
So it ends up the ramification. Then you'd send the cops after me, wouldn't you? Yeah. So I mean, for counterfeiting money, but these pharmaceuticals get by with this all the time. Now they're not going to get by with it for long because now RFK's on their case, and he's going after Big Pharma, big time, for doing this kind of baloney. And listen, I'd be the first to say that, going to a dentist, you want to have pain relief, and things like that. You go to the emergency room and they're going to use some stuff on you to keep you alive. But can things ever be done naturally to keep people alive? Or, can we handle healthcare situations in a natural manner? Well, chiropractic is a philosophy, science, and art of things natural. A system of adjusting the segments of the spinal column by hand only for the correction of the cause of dis-ease. So, you notice that part of this definition is things natural. In other words, we know that we have to handle the body in a natural manner, provide all of its needs, and and remove interference, and the body can do wonderful, wonderful things. I've seen it happen in my own life. I've seen it happen in my family's life. So with that, I don't know what else you can say other than that.
Well, I look at it, again, Doc, I look at it a different way. I look at it from, I have a friend who always says, look at everything from 1,000 feet above and notice all the little things that you can, all the details of your life when you put it together. And notice that when this improves. When this improves, this improves. We do not see it. It's subtle. But in the body, as the cells regenerate, as the inner cellular parts of our body start saying, wait a minute, now we're getting nutrients. Now we're getting this. Wow, wake up. We've never got this before. Because you got to remember, if 90% of the problem is the food and 90% of the problem is nutrition from the food, the answer is nutrition somewhere else. There's no other way. So by saying that and realizing that, we're now feeding our body the right nutrition every day when we weren't doing it for how many years? How many decades? You know,
Mm-hmm.
think about it. My one friend used to say, you didn't get like this overnight. So it's going to take you a long time to get healthy, but it's going to be a slow, subtle healthy. To fix one problem, you got to fix another. That's why they talk about med beds. But med beds right now, they're there's not enough of them. They're very expensive, and I don't think anybody's going to see a med bed for a long time. So knowing that, we want to stay as healthy with as much nutrients as we can, nutrient density in our bodies to keep us as healthy as we can be if we ever decide to go into a med bed. This way, the med bed doesn't have to do a lot of work. This way, it's going to save you a little bit of money. And this way, you'll be a little healthier while you're repairing your body.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the way it is. We're old cars, Doc. We're trying to make the antique car run again. So we're not giving it a brand new engine, but we're fixing the engine from the inside out. Intracellular,
Mm-hmm.
feeding the cells the proper nutrition that the cells need to help other parts of the body. That's the only way I can put it.
Yeah. Well, here's something else. I've had people ask me, well, is it really natural to take supplements? Well, we were created for supplements. What do you think the tree of life was all about?
Exactly.
It perpetuated life so long as man was obedient. When man got tempted and decided to take that step of disobedience, that's when, the Bible says that the wages of sin is death. And all of us are going to die if time lasts long enough. And and the thing of it is that our life force gradually diminishes as we go along. So the way to a long life is, number one, obedience to God's plan. And God's plan has to do with the Ten Commandments. Keeping the love of the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might, and thy neighbor as thyself. Now, I was watching something very interesting the other night on Bruce Lee, and how Bruce Lee he disciplined himself. He was like a machine. I mean, he studied forces, and he got to the place where he was so good he could kill anybody if you want, but he never did. Okay, he injured some people and was very concerned about it. He had this 1-inch punch. Now, it reminded me, in NUCA, we study how to deliver this adjustment in such a subtle way that the patient never feels it. It's called the triceps pull. We contact the atlas with this little bone called the pisiform. We roll in, and we have a stance. So we stand in accordance with this adjusting vector, and then we do its triceps pull.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pull. It's not a push. All muscles pull, and just the way things work, that force goes forward. And I can depress a very heavy plunger. We use bathroom plungers to make these coordinators up. We put a cork in it and put it on the wall, and we practice on it. The triceps pull, and the momentum goes when it goes in a straight line. It'll depress it in, and you can put a person's hand in front of that, and I can do a pull. I can contact their hand and do a pull, and they'll never feel the force going through their hand. It's amazing, because all we're going to try to do with the NUCA adjustment is to overcome the resistance. We have a specific analysis of the relationship of the head to the atlas to the lower cervical spine. We place the patient on their side on a headpiece. balanced according to the center of gravity of the skull, and we come up in with a specific angle predetermined by the x-rays, and just overcome the resistance, and it pops back into place. Patient will hear a little click, but they won't feel anything
Mm-hmm.
except a slight pressure on the side of their head, their side of their neck, and we take post x-rays to verify the correction. So, but Bruce Lee studied forces, and I suddenly realized that, see, he determined that he didn't ever want to hurt anybody. So after he had dislocated that guy's shoulder, he stayed right with him, comforted him, stayed with him, went into the hospital, he paid his hospital bills. He did everything for that guy possible. And it changed him to being more restrained with his forces, that he had the ability to, his fingers were weapons. He could do push-ups on a two-finger push-up, and I believe that he died early. And I think it was simply because he was using so much of his life force up in such heavy discipline and heavy use of his body, his life force just ran out.
Yeah, I believe so.
And it's just like, but when the Lord returns and takes us home, I believe that there's a heavenly home where we will partake of the tree of life again, and it will perpetuate life for those that have accepted the Lord throughout eternity. I believe that our bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit, and that we should really be protecting these bodies. We have the responsibility to be well. We have the responsibility to be in good health, to do what it takes to be in good health.
Mm-hmm.
Not to overuse our bodies, not to underuse them, and to rest when it's necessary.
Right.
And so that's what I try to do. And, Lord willing, I'll live a long time. Lord willing, the creeks don't rise. Hope to be here for quite some time. I have longevity in my family. My grandmother Masters lived to be 2 weeks shy of 100 years old. My uncle lived to be 2 weeks shy of 100 years old. My aunt is 93 years old. It's my mother's sister. So, there's a good chance that I could live quite some time.
Well, let me add to that, Doc. There's two sides: a good side and negative. The good side is, yes, you do have the gene pool that people live long. However, this is something that people don't think about. The environmental factors, the type of food we eat, the way we eat, how much we eat, wasn't a factor back then to them, because they ate for survival. They ate because they needed to eat. We eat just for the heck of eating. We don't fast anymore. I mean, I fast all the time. I fast every day to like 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon sometimes. I don't eat at all. But I do drink water. I take my longevity, so I'm getting the vitamins. And I want to alkalize my body, but I also want to oxygenate all my cells in my body to keep all disease away from me, if you understand what I'm saying. So I take all the proper nutrients. I try to do the best I can, but the stress that we have today is more stresses than they've had, because we have electronic equipments that fail. We have refrigerators and just normal stuff that anybody would have in their house. But when it goes bad, it's fine if it's okay. It runs great, no problem, everybody's good. Once you have a problem with it, the stress comes. Now the environmental factors start taking us down that bad road. And the reason why I want to touch on that is because all of us have to deal with that. It depends. And even a good friend of mine years ago, that was a nutritionist, also a juice person. He told me, he said, your health, every time you have stress in it, and we all can't avoid it. We drive every day, deal with stress every day, whatever it is. We can't avoid the stress, but the body recovers better from stress if it's more nutrient density in the body. In other words, as many nutrients as we can get. And unfortunately, there's not a way a lot to get that other than longevity. And there's the way right there. It's contact Dr. Wiedemann, or you can contact me at healthreform90 at gmail.com or call him at 406-270-3754. Now, we're not using the website right now because we have some issues with that, but Doc, they can go where and find you?
Yeah, at the 406-270-3754. Just text me and I'll get back to you.
He does get back to you, people. He really does.
That is the best way to do it. And but anyway, another thing is the idea of, there was a book called Stress Without Distress by Dr. Hans Selye, and he advocates exercise to counteract stress, which is fine. Exercise alone won't do it, though, because you can, Dr. Wallach talks about, he has a lecture that he used to sell. Now, I don't know if I haven't heard this lecture for quite some time, but it was called Dead Athletes Don't Lie. And he took all the history of these, a lot of these athletes, and he said they were sweating their minerals out. Lou Gehrig is one of them. He had Lou Gehrig's disease. It was because he was sweating his minerals out. They're running around the bases and they're hitting hitting balls and stuff like that. And yeah, they were performing great, but they sweat all their minerals out. Who knows if Bruce Lee might still be with us if he had proper nutrients.
And I would say this too with the water, guys. If you drink way too much water, and Doc and I talked about this, you got to hydrate yourself. But if you drink too much water, you're going to flush all the nutrients out of your body. Your water is going to actually look clear. And that's the way mine was for the last 3 days, real clear. So I pulled back on some of this water.
Yeah, you can actually have water intoxication. There was a lady down in Davenport, Iowa, that she was going through some mental issues where she thought she had to drink lots and lots of water. And we couldn't, her husband couldn't stop her from it. And she actually had to be put in the hospital because of water intoxication. And they had to restrict her from taking a bunch of water. So all things in moderation. Now, another thing that we'll talk about sometime is temperance. Treating this body in a manner that we want to care for it. That means not taking when you take medication, every medication has a side effect to it. Every one. And you're actually subtracting from your every medication you take complicates your condition more.
Right.
It makes the condition more hopeless. And so I don't advocate drinking alcohol. The reason I don't is because of what it does to the blood system. It causes your red blood cells to glunk together. They lose their electrical charge. There are capillaries so small that they have to bend in half to get through. And what causes drunkenness is literally lack of oxygen to your brain. And smoking, things like that, using tobacco is a filthy habit that clogs up the lungs and causes a big problem with the alveoli. There are little sweepers that sweep out your bronchi and your trachea all the time. And there's a thin layer of mucus that flows along the surface of that. And these cilia constantly sweep. When you smoke, it paralyzes them so that they can't sweep. This is why smokers will get up and cough in the morning and they'll have to have a cigarette.
Doc, I want to talk about that real quick. And because both of my parents smoked. My mom smoked for 40, 50 years. My dad smoked for probably close to that. Secondhand smoke to me was just horrible. I could never smoke because of that. I kind of glad that they did that because I was never going to smoke, but I would have never smoked if it was for that. However, let me say what you said is absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. Now, if you go into the science of it, the way you look at it is if you have tar, tar is a sticky substance, gummy. The tar gets on the surface of the lung tissue, the inside and outside, and it suffocates. It's like a sealer, like an asphalt sealer. It seals over your concrete or your asphalt that you have in the driveway. It seals all the little holes that breathe, the tissue lungs, the tissue in
Mhm.
the lungs. So they breathe. So when you cover them up and seal them, that's why your lungs are gasping for air. Because people are like, I don't understand how smoking could do that. Well, because you're gumming it up with the gum from the tar and nicotine. The tar is the sticky substance that stays on. If you did the experiment, you took a cigarette and you put it in a glass jar, and you all you did was light the cigarette and had the filter part go in the jar when it sealed and locked and had it covered, and basically the air would pull cigarette in, right? You had another thing to pull it out, and then as you see the smoke come out into the jar, that's what goes into your lungs. And after a day or two, if you look at it, it's got like a brown film around it.
Mhm.
That brown film is the tar
Well,
that is accumulated.
I've been involved in smoking clinics, to help people stop smoking.
Thank you for doing that.
And then we had a smoking Sally and a smoking Sam, and we would put two jars in there, and it was filled with fiberglass, and you put a cigarette in there, and there was a like a fan that were a pump that would pump air from the cigarette down into the jar, and you could see it accumulate. Just one cigarette, and they have actually taken. I remember seeing a film one time where they took a mouse and they took the amount of nicotine that was in that cigarette and fed it to the mouse. The mouse died.
Because
Yeah,
they're little ones, can't take it.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But anyway, Doc, we're going to say goodbye.
yeah.
Thanks everybody for being here. We hope you've enjoyed tonight's show. Hopefully next Monday we'll be able to do a real show again and talk about the stuff that longevity is. It's an amazing product. Yeah. And it's not just one product. There's so many different ones. It's like
Oh, yeah.
Doc and I have a wish list on stuff that we want. Who knows if we're ever going to get it, but it's nice to think about anyway. Thank you, everybody, for being here. You have a good night. Okay.